Hey, welcome to the Office of Undergraduate Research Education series. Today's session is on the responsible use of AI in research. This is a virtual event and it's being recorded. So we ask everyone to mute yourself and turn off your camera to ensure the best experience. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself when invited by the speaker. And this is the event evaluation form. I will put the link in the chat after I introduce the speakers. We would love everyone to complete this after the presentation, but we want to remind the Europe, Wilkes, and early exploration scholars that you must complete this in order to receive credit for attending today. And the mission of the Office of Undergraduate Research is to facilitate and promote undergraduate, student, faculty, collaborative research, and creative works in all disciplines throughout the U campus. And we would like to acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The U recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribe states and the federal government, and we affirm the U's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. And now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have Dr. Penny Atkins. She's the Director of Research and Science at the Science Computing and Imaging Institute. And also Dr. Caren Frost, who's the Associate VP for Research Integrity and Compliance.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction. So, as a high level, we'll kind of talk about an overarching view of AI, some use cases. We'll discuss some federal and university, kind of the AI landscape at both of those levels, to talk about acceptable use in research and in grants, talk about a little bit about privacy concerns when we're using AI, and then also highlight some opportunities for collaboration across campus. But before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and start with a word cloud. And so we have this word cloud around AI. So you can either scan the QR code here in the corner or go to pollev.com/RAI. And we're just looking for kind of general responses on how you feel about artificial intelligence. So as you put in your responses, single word responses are great. If you want to do double word responses, you can put those in quotes. But we're kind of just looking to get a general feel of how folks are feeling about artificial intelligence, if there's anything if they're worried, if they're excited, any great things that you have to say about artificial intelligence. Damaging. That's a heavy one. Trustworthy. Sure. Helpful. We're already starting to see a little bit of the breadth of what AI can be. I think it can really encompass this large spectrum. Um, it can be extremely damaging. It can also be extremely helpful. It provides a lot of information. It can be scary. And so, what we're trying to do here is to really kind of provide some additional information to help folks understand the limitations and risks around using AI, as well as some of the potential benefits. Um, I think that there are a lot of benefits for AI to be potentially be helpful and advantageous to us in our lives, both in our work lives, our personal lives. But it really underlies this idea that it needs to be trustworthy and we need to approach it in a responsible fashion. And so I think there are a lot of folks or a lot of words here that I think really will speak to what Caren and I will be talking about today. I'm seeing hopeful. I love that we're intimidated. Yes, so I think that this session will actually be quite helpful for this audience. Okay, so the next question is, in one word, describe the challenges you face with using AI in your day-to-day life. Um, so this could be anything from your work life, your life as a student, your life, your personal life. Um, Confidentiality, that's a huge one. I think with use of AI, we need to be very aware of what's happening to our data. where it's being potentially processed or stored, or how it's being used. Um, that goes into understanding, really making sure that we are familiar with what we're doing when we're using AI. Um, Laziness, it can definitely, I think there's a lot of fear that we may over rely on AI and become lazy or stop kind of using our critical thinking skills. But I do think that it can enable us to kind of operate at a little bit of a higher level than previous. We have validity. I think that's a huge one, is making sure that you can check the accuracy of data that you, or kind of the accuracy of your use. Um, Other words that I'm missing, I think information, understanding kind of what you need to know about it. Um, but I think we're seeing a lot of similar ideas. And I think we have one more. So, what AI tools are folks using on an everyday or regular basis? Um, I think we may or may not be aware of some of the places that AI is being used and everything. So Gemini and ChatGPT, these are obvious kind of generative AI models. Google is now producing a generative AI response to most of your Google searches, unless you turn that off. Literature reviews. I think there's a lot of AI tools that can kind of help us get some of that general searching, but then being able to distill that. Notebook LM, that has some really nice features to create chat bots and kind of podcasts around things. Copilot, that's a great one. That's approved and available at the U. Any other tools that folks are using? Things like Siri, if you are an iPhone user, or I think that if you have, say, an Alexa or something like that at home to help, you know, play music or check the weather, I think there's a lot of different sources um, where AI is kind of found throughout our lives. Okay, I think we had some good responses. I'll go ahead and stop sharing that screen and go back to the slides, and we'll continue this discussion. The goal is for this to be really kind of interactive. So if you have questions, put those in the chat and we can make sure to address them. So first, we're going to kind of talk about AI. I think it's clear that all of you are fairly familiar with AI, at least at some level, based on your responses. But I think really kind of stepping back, AI is not something that's new. We're seeing a lot more discussion around it, largely around generative AI, but artificial intelligence has really been a field of computer science around since kind of the late 1940s, 1950s era. Um, at that time, it was much more rule-based, but I think the goal of really being able to exceed or replicate human intelligence has been around for quite a while. In the later 1900s, machine learning became more of a thing, and so we started to see some more ability for making decisions and predictions based on data. And then in the 2010s, we're seeing deep learning kind of emerge. And then in the 2020s, generative AI has really been the top kind of feature within AI that has gotten a lot of publicity and a lot of use. And so often when folks are talking about AI, they're specifically talking about generative AI. But I want to provide this context, as generative AI is not the whole picture. I think it's just one aspect of this picture. So we're really seeing AI as something that is affecting almost all of our opportunities and challenges across almost every sector of science, every sector of our lives. We see that routine daily tasks can be changed through use of things like Siri or ChatGPT. Our Google searches have changed, but also to kind of enabling scientific discovery and economic growth. So we have a lot of potential negative results as well. So there are negative social and environmental consequences, economic consequences, and it's really important that we think about responsible use when we use AI and kind of how it's affecting a lot of our aspects of our lives. So in 2024, we saw two Nobel Prizes really focused around AI advancements. And so this was both in chemistry and physics. And I think this highlights that we're really seeing these developments in AI that occurred maybe not even so recently, but really we're seeing the impact of these today. So AI at the University of Utah. So we do have an AI leadership team. Both Caren and I are members of that team. The mission is really to responsibly advance and use AI in support of the U's mission spanning research, education, and societal impact. We are viewing AI not as a tool, but as really an essential infrastructure. So something similar to having a laptop. We expect that we want to be able to enable all students, staff, and faculty to have the data models, systems, and hardware that are needed to innovate and really make them both ready and reliable for everyone as needed. So, as an office, we have the goals of leading AI strategy, policy, and governance across the university. Um, and so, really understanding what's happening to the data that we're using, making sure that we are protecting university data and university people, and really leading forward with a strategy that enables innovation and democratization of this technology. We want to facilitate responsible advancement and use of AI. So, really, again, focusing on this responsible aspect, which includes ethical considerations as well as kind of broader impact awareness as well. We want to manage consistent communication. So we want to make sure that folks across campus are aware of any opportunities, policies, practices, or responsibilities. And we'll be talking about some of those today. But the goal is to really make sure that we're as open as possible about our use of AI. So we have three high-level priorities. The first is learning with AI. So making sure that we provide opportunities for faculty, staff, and students to learn about how to use AI, be aware and knowledgeable about what's happening with data that they're putting into these models, and that will enable them to innovate with AI. So being able to kind of take the next step into their research or studies to really be able to use and leverage AI to the best of their opportunities. And then this last one, AI is cyber infrastructure. So really underlying that idea that we would like to democratize AI access to folks more broadly. So the 1U Responsible AI Initiative is a $100 million initiative here at the University of Utah. It was established in late 2023, so in October of 2023, under President Taylor Randall's direction and operated out of our Scientific Computing and Imaging Institute. And that's where I work with Manish Parashar, the director of the 1U RAI. The goal for this is to really advance translational AI with the underlying idea of enhancing societal good. So we want to ensure that we're protecting privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, and while we're promoting fairness, accountability, and transparency through all of these. Through this, we have three initial research focus areas in environment, focused a little bit on environmental resilience and making sure that we can kind of use AI to the best of our abilities when we're looking at natural disasters or understanding the environmental impact of AI. Healthcare and wellness, this is really looking at how we can ensure that we are protecting patient privacy while also being able to advance their healthcare and personalize their healthcare as much as possible. Then teaching and learning, really understanding how AI is going to affect the future of teaching and learning and how we can best prepare our students for the workplace of the future. So we have kind of a four-pronged approach. The first is research expertise. So this includes bringing in researchers to the University of Utah, acknowledging current researchers in this space, and we are doing some faculty hiring in these three thematic areas that I mentioned, so environment, teaching and learning, and healthcare and wellness. And then we have postdoctoral fellow programs, so really opportunities to just enable leading edge innovative research in AI. We're also building out cyber infrastructure. So this is something many of you or some of you may be familiar with our Center for High Performance Computing. That is the High Performance Computing Center for the University of Utah, but we also serve folks from Utah State and other universities across the state. But we are doing a lot to build out some of that cyber infrastructure. And so this is being done with an idea of ensuring that we can provide both the latest GPUs, which are the technology or infrastructure that really enables a lot of AI research and deep learning models, making sure that we're providing access to those while also ensuring that we're updating old GPUs and compute infrastructure such that we are reducing the energy consumption of the infrastructure that we do have at the U. We do a lot of community engagement, and this includes working with partners from industry, government, and across different academic institutions. We've done partnerships with the Leonardo Museum downtown with their exhibit on AI. We've done things at the Natural History Museum. We also have a number of special interest groups that are consisted of folks from across different sectors and backgrounds from across our community. And then developing the services and support to really support this endeavor long term. So I think developing partnerships and understanding how we as a state can work together on these things. I talked a little bit already about the thematic focus areas, but this highlights where we'll be really focusing our growth over the next several years in hiring new faculty and new research areas. So I mentioned environmental resilience, our health data operationalization, and then rethinking education for the AI revolution. Going back to infrastructure, we have this is the first $5 million upgrade that's been done over about the last year. We've seen these really large increases in existing infrastructure at the U. So if you're interested in getting started with some AI research, CHPC is available for use, as well as some ski infrastructure. And so if you're interested in kind of understanding how to use this, I can connect you with the right resources for that as well. And I mentioned this a little bit with our community engagement, but we're doing a lot to build a community consortium around responsible AI. So this is specifically the idea of making sure that we're using AI and advancing AI responsibly. We're thinking about things to ensure that we're getting voices from across our community and really democratizing that discussion. So making sure that we have voices from not only Salt Lake City or the University of Utah or our government, but also partners from various aspects across the community. I mentioned these special interest groups as well. They're focused on very specific areas like infrastructure or policy. We have a specific group looking at community engagement, so how to better engage some of the voices that aren't often heard when we talk about AI, and then also developing workforce and education around AI for the community. You may not be aware, but Utah was the first state to have an Office of AI Policy, and we work very closely with this office. They are essentially set up to provide two things. One is regulatory relief. So if you're looking at starting up a new company or just trying a new innovative project that uses AI, this regulatory relief allows us to really explore the context of AI within a specific area of innovation and understand what risks and potential concerns might exist and make sure that we're thinking about the right things as we develop regulation for these companies. So it's a nice way to allow some scientific work to really inform policy at the legislation level. And then the other is a learning lab, which complements this regulatory relief model in the sense that it allows us to really explore AI solutions in a closed sandbox space where we're able to kind of really understand what stakeholders need to be involved and how we can best progress in really the safest way and most ethically sound way when looking at new technologies. Um, Utah is also a unique place in that we have a very strong AI strategy that's really founded on these three principles of responsible innovation, public-private partnerships. So these are partnerships across academia, government, and industry, and then accessible innovation infrastructure. So you may have seen this was just announced yesterday, but there's a large investment from the state in combination with the University of Utah and the Huntsman Family Foundation to develop some statewide infrastructure. So there's a $50 million investment that will be happening over, I think, the next 5 years that will really enable AI infrastructure for across the state, not just the University of Utah. So I think there's a lot of support in Utah to do this. Earlier this year, we also saw this partnership with NVIDIA. This partnership, I think, was the second of its kind, but really the idea is that we can promote AI education across the state So by taking faculty or researchers from our universities, and not just the University of Utah, but across Utah, who are doing work in AI, can kind of be educators to other folks who want to use AI. So it's really a nice partnership to help grow our knowledge and understanding of AI across Utah. And then I will turn it over to Caren.
Great. Thanks, Penny. I mean, there is a lot going on here at the university. I think it's fantastic. And the announcement yesterday about that partnership with the Huntsman family, cancer and AI, I just think that's phenomenal. This is exactly where we need to be going. And we can see that because there was an executive order that came out in January that talks about the president's council of advisors on science and technology, and they want increased emphasis on emerging technologies. And one of those is AI. So this is very exciting. The On this slide, there is a link there to America's AI Action Plan, and I encourage everybody to go in and just take a look at that because you can see what the current White House is thinking about the AI action plan for the nation. I think it's really great. So in July of this year, just as we're going to start talking about some of the things we just need to be aware of for ethical work with AI. The National Institutes came out with a statement that says the not consider applications that are either substantially developed by AI or contain sections substantially developed by AI. So we are in the process of working with the Office of General Counsel and waiting for clarification on this statement in terms of what does this really mean, right? Can we not use it when we're doing brainstorming about ideas? When would we not be able to use it? So then the NIH has said that they would refer this to the Office of Research Integrity, and that's a federal office. Here at the University of Utah, we have a research integrity officer who is ramping up to deal with some of these things. In fact, we've already had one case where somebody used AI inappropriately, and we've had to talk to that person about maybe there were some other ethical things you should have considered here. So we're aware of these things happening, and anybody can fall into this pitfall right now of not using AI responsibly. So we really want to make sure everybody is able to do that and understand what that means. So yes, as Penny was talking about, we know that the AI platforms for research, we need things that can do modeling, calculations, help us with our analyses, some interpretation of things, and some publishing things, right? We need AI platforms that can help us with all of these things. But again, we have to really determine what kind of guidance the university needs to have on these things, and how do we make sure that people are doing things responsibly. When we first started talking about AI and what we need to do for guidance, everybody was concerned that we don't have a policy around AI. And one of the things that Penny and I and Manish Parshar, who's our chief AI officer, have all been saying is don't think we really need a policy right now because everything is changing so quickly. And we already have rules and things in place for how people might think about data. So if we are simply moving AI and what we're creating out of that into the data space, then we already have things here that are perfectly appropriate and will help us navigate this space. So here is a wonderful classification matrix that BB Venick, who was with our information privacy office, created for us. So there's this, but if you think about the type of data you have, is it restricted data, which means you've got personal health identifiers in there, there's health information, credit card, that kind of thing. Then there are certain things that you don't want to use AI for those kinds of data, because depending on what's going on behind the scenes with that platform, those data could then be going into other areas that we don't want to be sharing. Right? And then there's sensitive data, and sensitive data really has to do with things about your intellectual property, employee information, student information, litigation materials, which is an interesting thing, any kind of contracts. And I see that the word physical is misspelled there. Great. Buildings and utilities, detailed documentation. It's more sensitive. So we just need to think about where we would share that and what we would do with that kind of information. And then we have public data, which is really low level sensitivity data, right? This would be the general public would be able to access this within the confines of what's legal. So like University of Utah history, a number of our things at the libraries would be in here. So we just need to really think about which policy, which rule applies depending on the type of data. So I put them in a different way for people to see it if that's more helpful than that matrix table. All right, so just things that we all need to be aware of when we're using AI. Think about the terms of use. I know sometimes people are saying, oh, I just downloaded this thing. It's just really easy to use. And I'm just going to put this in there. And you're not really realizing that there's a third party there, or there's something behind that they're going to take that and they're going to use it to help their LLMs develop new kinds of things. But then your information is out there for other people to use. So got to be careful about that. Because the inputs may train the underlying AI models, and then it may become irretrievable, or if it's intellectual property, you could simply lose your intellectual property. Grant and sponsors may prohibit the use of generative AI completely, as we saw for the NIH, and I think there will be more of that coming out soon. And thinking about what are the data flow storage, which may be outside of permitted jurisdictions. This is all legal language, right? Here at the University of Utah, with the work you're doing, papers you're writing, research you're working on, that kind of thing. So just things to consider. Just so you know, we have a guidance document that we have created, and it really is about AI in research and teaching. So if you click on this, you can access that. And also, if you go to our wonderful website, which is ai.utah.edu, you will be able to find all kinds of information there about research and AI, teaching and AI, and healthcare and AI. And we are sort of using that website to pull pieces together. So then it will link you into other websites. It will provide more up-to-date information, and just linking all things across campus, because I'm sure that you all hear the University of Utah can be siloed, right? And what we're trying to do is pull everybody together so we're sharing and talking. So every other Friday at noon on Teams, we have AI office hours. And if you would like to participate in that, you need to go to the website and you can sign up to participate in that. And then we have an AI community of practice, which is the fourth Tuesday of every month at 11. And we have people come in and talk about the amazing work they're doing using AI, and areas where they think there would be a use for AI, and they just want to talk about get ideas from other people about it. It's a really, really great hour-long discussion. All right, so one of the things that is going to be going on across campus, hopefully sometime this November, there is going to be a student-led AI symposium. This is under the direction of Tony Sams, who's the Learning Experience Manager at the Marriott Library. I just happen to be sort of working with the students and Tony on this, and we have Jeb, Logan, and Daya on this, and they're the co-chairs. But if you are interested in participating in this AI symposium and you'd like to work with us on this, please reach out to Tony Sams. This is going to be really exciting. Students are going to talk about how at the University of Utah, faculty could work with students in better ways across all disciplines in using AI. So it's going to be really exciting. Great. Hey, Penny, could you do me a favor and define data democratization? That's one of those things I'm always like, oh yeah, wait, what is that? And I have to think about it again. I mean, everybody probably knows what it is, but I sometimes am a little unclear.
Thanks, Caren. I actually realized that I was throwing around that word without thinking twice about it, because it is something that we're really focused on. So, democratization is not a political term. It's really about providing access to everyone, the idea that it's a democratized access. So, the really goal of democratized data or democratized infrastructure is the idea that we're able to provide access to everyone. And that's not just folks who are at the university or folks who are living in Salt Lake City, but really we would love to see having that everyone has access to these different tools. And so I think with AI, one of the advantages is that if you have internet access, then you can often have access to some of these models. Granted, you need also the knowledge and understanding to be able to use them appropriately, but not all Utahns have internet access. So I think it's really developing even from the back, kind of from the ground up, of making sure that we're providing the tools and resources for folks to have access, to have understanding, and to really be able to feel confident and use it responsibly when they're looking at either AI or data. When we're talking about data democratization, it's really about the access to the data. For AI, it's more access to the tools and AI models. But a lot of that underlines this idea that we need to have general knowledge about what's happening to be able to use these effectively.
We can open up to questions. If any of the attendees have any questions, you can speak up or put them in the chat.
Yeah, I think the conversations around AI are really most effective when we're able to get conversations started. I'm sure all of you have questions based on the initial responses to those word cloud activities. I think there's probably some questions that all of you have about either um, protecting your data or using AI in a specific um, for a specific use case, whether that's in your personal life or in your student life. So yeah, we would love to take your questions and answer those.
I don't really have so much of a question, but like more so a comment. Um, I feel like the AI things research is really great. There's a lot of potential for AI, but somebody wrote this quote and it's just always in my head every time I think of AI. And it's again, not to negate the good that comes from AI, but I do think it's a relevant quote in today. Um, and it said, make sure you're taking care of your health. It's not so much related to research, but it says make sure you're taking care of your health because your future doctors are currently cheating on their exams with AI. So, and I just like that quote, but obviously great for a lot of things, but I think that's just a really good quote.
And I think that goes to the idea of who typed in laziness for kind of challenges around AI. I think, and that's something that's incredibly important right now, because right at this moment, well, maybe step back 2 years when ChatGPT originally was launched, but I think we're still reacting to it. That changed the landscape. So I think maybe it was more like when I was in school, but it was always the idea of like, can you use a calculator or not on an exam? Is it providing you undue like benefit by being able to use a calculator? But I think AI similarly is a huge tool that folks can use for their learning. But it's also a tool that can really provide an unfair advantage depending on how your classes are set up. And I think when ChatGPT was released, our classes and courses, our educators were not prepared for students to have that tool at their fingertips. And so I think that that's very much something that we're still learning about how to best make sure that folks can use this technology for greater good rather than for cheating on their exams. So I think there's examples where, especially, I'm more in kind of the AI and computer science realm, and I think that one thing that could be a huge advantage is, say, folks who are not coders or are not familiar with software development or code development, they can then take their grand ideas and kind of critical thinking concepts and apply some of the code generation tools to create a really nice product. And so it provides you a kind of an advantage that you wouldn't otherwise have. But I think on the contrary side, if you are generating that code and unable to understand it or be able to make sure that you know what's being executed, it can be very, very dangerous, both if you run that code, say, on a university computer and it ends up being malware or something like that. I think that's a huge risk. But I think there's also this underlying thing that when we're using AI, we need to also be able to verify the output. And without that first-hand knowledge, it's really difficult to have that. So I definitely think that comment is noted. I think that this is something that right now is very relevant. I think we are all kind of trying to understand how to live our lives in in kind of conjunction and in parallel with the AI developments that we're seeing today. And yeah, we need to make sure that we individually are using it responsibly, but as an institution, we also have a responsibility to make sure that students are using it responsibly.
I was just gonna say I agree. Yeah, it's there's a lot of really wonderful things that can come from it, and just like anything, we're just a bunch of monkeys, and we need to make sure that we're not, making anything good can come from this as well as there's a lot of dangers, and I just think it's very powerful, definitely worth being respected, and just being aware of it is important. Being aware of the, dangers of it too is important.
Yeah, because thinking about that, sort of adding on, right? Making sure you're aware of what the output is. So we had a student who went through and was asked to pull together a literature summary on a topic that they did not know very much about. And so they used ChatGPT and pulled together this amazing literature summary. But when you went in and looked at one of the paragraphs, those citations don't exist. They're not real. So it was a hallucination, because I think sometimes AI just wants to make you happy, whether we think that is really true or not, but it's just trying to do the best it can with what it is you've asked it to do. So make sure that you're aware of the field that you are doing your literature search in and putting things together, right? Because yeah, it hallucinates, right? It wants to make you happy.
Yep, I agree. I'm not trying to be a hater in AI, but I agree with everything you guys have said 100%. I am very neutral.
Okay, we have a question from a registrant. What kind of legislation could be passed that would help ensure ethical use of AI in research?
That's a great question. And I think so Utah takes the approach of this learning lab and regulatory mitigation, which I think is a very great way to both protect research but also enable innovation. The way that Utah has set this up is to not make laws or legislation, like not to propose anything that we don't quite yet understand. And so I think we're seeing other states kind of propose these grand ideas of how AI should be controlled more broadly, but without fully understanding some of the details, without kind of exploring it scientifically, I think it's a little bit difficult to put it forward some of those laws or usage regulations. And so I think Utah is doing it in an interesting way where we're really using that Office of AI policy to investigate and explore within a specific area. So last year, a main focus was mental health, which is obviously a very scary area to have AI operate unless we have a lot of controls around it. And so last year, that office, along with researchers from the University of Utah and other experts throughout the community, kind of came together around that area to explore how that would look and what would be needed. And then we saw in this legislative session back in January some of those proposed laws that would kind of help put in the appropriate guardrails in that specific space. That being said, that's going to be inherently a slow process. That exploration is going to be slow. So I think other states have also taken this kind of risk model. So if and this is similar to the table that Caren showed, where we're looking at kind of the risk level based on data, but instead of data, you're looking at potential impact that it could have in specific areas. Like, are we talking about, I guess, AI models for specific uses or at different scales? And that's how other states have kind of started to approach AI regulation. I think that the way that Utah is approaching it is a really smart way to do it, but I think we'll kind of see how this continues to play out. But I know their focuses this year in Utah are around deep fakes. I should know the other topic, but I think, they're kind of looking at some of these higher level topics around what concerns we should specifically have when AI affects an area. And I think that that's probably a fairly smart way to start making laws to protect us.
Another registrant asked about grant writing with AI, and you indicated some foundations do not allow that. So when it is allowed, what is an ethical way of using it?
So right now, we don't recommend using AI to write the grant proposal itself, right? So I think using it for what is the most current thinking about X topic, making sure that, maybe it could summarize, it could put a table together for you. I mean, I think there's things like that you can do, but right now I would not propose using any AI for actually writing the proposal, the narrative that goes with it. So I think that's kind of where we are at the moment. There will be more guidance that comes out about this because in the end, we can't put AI back in the box. It's out there and people are using it, and we just need to figure out how to make it effective when we use it. So I think more to come is probably the best response there.
Okay, I have another question from a registrant. How can we justify using AI knowing the bigger environmental and social impacts?
That's another really great question, and I think something that is a constant and evolving question. I think there are a lot of opportunities for AI to help our ability to either investigate or protect our environment and our society. It's just we have to ensure that we're using it correctly. When we're talking about the environmental impact, I know that there are a lot of water and energy usages, and that's a really important aspect that I think we're all thinking about as we use AI. And I think we continue to see AI kind of pop up in just about everywhere. Google was mentioned earlier, so no longer are you just typing in a search query into Google that's querying in the traditional sense, but now generative AI is then supporting that, which is then has kind of that impact. And so I think one thing that we can do as individuals is be aware of where AI is happening in our lives. And you can turn off those features. I think you can turn off those features on your phone or on your internet browser, your Google searches. So that's one thing that you can do. Um, Definitely avoiding AI generated YouTube videos is a great way to do it. But at the same time, once those videos are created, they're out there. That's been used, but our interest in those and the views continuing to kind of go up are something that is definitely an environmental impact that we, as humanity, I think will definitely need to figure out how to approach. But I think at an individual level, we can do our best to understand when we're using AI, that we're using it for the right things. Generating deepfake videos for just enjoyment or something, probably not the most responsible use of AI, and has a significant environmental impact when we're thinking about that generative aspect of those things. Um, but at the same time, I think that with scale comes efficiencies. So we may not see these yet, but I think as the technology continues to develop, we're seeing algorithms that are attacking some of the inefficiencies in our use of technology. And so as we continue to evolve these algorithms, we'll see more environmentally or efficient algorithms. So hopefully that will reduce the impact. And then I think making sure that we're using AI for the right things. That's not a foolproof answer. That's a really tricky one, but I think awareness and really understanding that over time, as long as we produce are going down a path of responsibility and thinking about this and continuing to see how we can improve some of these things, I think that's probably one of the best ways to address that. But I'm sure Caren has some ideas. Some of you might also have great ideas. I'd love to hear from you if you have thoughts.
I don't really have anything to add to that. I absolutely agree. We got to watch what we're doing with it and pay attention to how we use it, right? Yeah. What does everybody else think?
Think all of you have spent your time today with us. So I'd also be interested if there was anything that you learned about today that you didn't know about or that you thought was interesting, or if there was something you wish we would have covered. Now's your time.
I really liked the environmental question that came through. I think that is just not something that's talked about enough. Like it's just not. And I mean, I've heard of it, but everybody is raging over AI, and I do think like they're just for social responsibility, we should all be like there should just be a lot more things like this where people are like even in universities where somewhat mandatory, like we all have to go through all these different little courses to sign up and be a student, but like AI is becoming super prevalent and it's just really like important to everybody to be aware of like the environmental impact, because I definitely don't know anybody who is not somewhat using it like willy-nilly, irresponsibly for stuff that they really just don't need to use it for. And I would be lying if I said that I haven't been one of those people as well. I think it's just like it's just so common now that it's becoming normalized. And I just think that should be happening way more, is having a serious conversation about the environmental impact of it.
Yeah, and I think to your point about, using it for something that's potentially silly or not important, part of that is also the learning process. So to know how AI works and like when you're seeing hallucinations, you kind of have to play around with the tools to really understand how you might be able to use them. And so I think um, awareness is really the key thing. And so I think talking about it and making sure that folks that you're communicating with are aware. And yeah, I think Chloe is echoing that as well in the chat. So thanks, Chloe. Um, yeah, I think it's really awareness and understanding, when you use AI, is this something that we should be using AI for? Like cheating on exam is probably a really bad use of AI, but if we're able to use it to extend our critical thinking skills or to extend our current capabilities, I think that that is definitely a use where you can kind of understand the potential benefits for it. And I do think that as we continue to see advancements in the algorithms, we'll see hopefully less energy usage, less water usage in some of these models. So.
Well, thank you, Caren and Penny, for this very interesting presentation. A lot to think about. I just want to remind everybody to complete the event evaluation. I just put it in the chat. And the Europe, Wilkes, and Early Exploration Scholars, you must complete that in order to get credit for today. And I just want to remind everybody, the Office of Undergraduate Research, we're in the SIL Center, which is just across the parking lot from the Union. Our website is our.utah.edu, and you can email us at our@utah.edu. And thank you again, Penny and Caren. We truly appreciate it.